Welcome to our full council on Thursday, the 21st of January at 9:30. This will be a remote meeting with remote attendance by councillors and remote access of press and public, and will be held in accordance with the provisions of the local authorities and police and crime panels, coronavirus flexibility of local authority, and police and crime panel meetings, England and Wales regulations 2020. I'd like to welcome members and staff to the meeting, and also listeners to Island FM, the press, public, and to our guests from South West Water today, Helen Richards, Andrew Rowntree, and Joe Eckroyd joining the meeting. Thank you. I will ask all members and those of you on the call, please, to remain on mute during the meeting, and keep some of the video links down as well, please, unless you're speaking or whatever, because it helps the signal. I will also be asking for members against any motions rather than members for, because you will otherwise be deemed as for unless you state against or abstaining. Thank you. I'll now ask our monitoring officer, Stephen Taylor, to do a roll call of members, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, members. I will call the roll in the order as on the agenda. So, Councillor Dean.
Yeah, present.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Present.
Thank you. Chairman. Councillor Legg.
Yeah, present.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Present.
Councillor Roger.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lady Barclay.
I have apologies from Councillor Lady Mary Barclay, who is currently having an operation on her foot in Trelisk and therefore can't be with us, and we send her our best wishes. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Councillor Dorian Smith.
I have apologies from Councillor Dorian Smith.
Okay. Councillor Mrs. Bottick.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Mumford.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Nellams.
Present.
Councillor Sims.
Present.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We come to item 1 on the agenda. Any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Andrew Guy.
Yeah, Chairman, thank you. I'd like to declare an interest in agenda item 9 as it's my wife's application, and I will switch off from the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Marcus.
Non-pecuniary interest in item 12. I'll switch off as well.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that I'm the council representative on the Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly Local Enterprise Partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Item 13, I will not be involved as my wife is the applicant. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed for those. Item 2 on our agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting, which you all have. Are there any issues, please, with regard to those minutes? Okay, then could I have a proposer and a seconder for the adoption of the minutes, please?
Proposed.
Councillor Mumford and Councillor Grottick. Thank you. Is anybody against the adoption of these minutes? No, and they're carried. Thank you very much. Chairman's announcement is item 3. I just have one announcement to make, and that is that some of our community will now fortunately have received information about appointments to receive their vaccine, which is obviously very good news. But I would just like to point out that all communications regarding vaccines and everything to do with the vaccine programme is being organised by the NHS. It is not to do with our council, and we are not responsible for that. So please understand that I'm hoping that there'll be some communications within the next day or two, but all those communications will come directly from the NHS. The only thing I would like to point out to our community is that those people who will be receiving their vaccinations, clearly it takes a little time for those vaccinations to actually work for you. And please also be advised that you are still able to carry the virus if you were to catch it. So that obviously could then be transferred by you even though you've been vaccinated. So I would ask that everybody remains vigilant, keeps safe, and abides by the guidelines that you've all been doing. Is much appreciated for our community. Thank you very much. Item 4 on our agenda is questions around Standing Order 14, which we have none. Item 5 on our agenda is to consider reports from committees. We just have one committee with minutes in your papers. That was our Outbreak Engagement Board, which I chaired. And so you have all full information of that. Item 6 on our agenda is considering motions in accordance with Standing Order 12. I have none.
Chairman, could we just kindly have a vote to note the minutes of the engagement, George, just for the record?
Yes, by all means. Thank you. Would somebody like to propose and second the minutes of the Outbreak Board? Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Robert, Steve Sims, I'm happy to second. Can I just add a further note to what you said regarding the vaccines? I've seen on Facebook that Dr. Pickens put a message up that they're getting inundated with calls about the vaccine, and he's asking people to stop calling because it's overloading them, and people will be notified by the NHS when they're due to come. Just a quick note, I thought it was worth passing on.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Sims. Can we just go back, please? We've got a proposer and seconder for the adoption of the minutes of the Outbreak Board. And is anybody opposed to against the adoption of those minutes, please? No, then they're carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 7 on our agenda is urgent items. I have none. Item 8 on our agenda is an update from South West Water, and I'd like to hand over to Helen Richards, who will give this. Thank you very much.
Hi, it's Jo, if that's okay. Jo Eakroyd. I'm going to start off with the update, if that's okay with you all.
Yes, of course, Jo. I'm sorry.
No problem.
That's okay. I thought it was Helen. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first off, I'd just like to say thank you very much for inviting us today. It's a great opportunity for us to build some relationships with you on the Isles of Scilly, and we're really welcoming that opportunity. Well, hopefully you've received the slide pack that we sent out. Okay, so I'm just going to talk briefly through the slides. I know we've only got a short period of time, and obviously we've got some time for questions at the end, but I thought I'd introduce myself and my colleagues first. Obviously, you've got Helen Richards. She's our Programme Manager situated on the island, and I'm sure all of you, or if not most of you, have already met Helen, so that's great. With me today, I've got my colleague, Andrew Raintree, and he's our Director of Resilience. So between him and Helen, if there are any detailed technical questions that you've got, they'll be happy to help. My name's Jo Eastwood, and I'm the Customer Service Director for South West Water. And I'm really looking forward to, working with you all to do some really detailed customer engagement. But first off, I want to say that South West Water are a business who really want to build a sustainable future. We believe we've got a unique role to play, supporting the lives of people and the places they love for generations to come. And for us, it's not just about what we do, it's how we do it. And that is why we place such great importance on living our core values daily, operating in the public interest and in the regions that we support, which now I'm really pleased to say includes the Isles of Scilly. We care deeply about the environment and we take our role as custodians very seriously. We believe that for the Isles of Scilly, communities, ensuring that people can enjoy the environment they live in and the places that you clearly love is crucial for now and for generations to come, for your economy and for the well-being and physical health of all the islanders. And indeed, as a leading FTSE company in the southwest, we believe it's our absolute responsibility to promote and contribute to the regional economy, and we're looking forward to doing that. Could go on to the next slide, please. We're also a purpose-led organisation. We believe in taking a leadership role in promoting environmental, social and governance goals. It's the role of every responsible business today to create a sustainable and financial solid future. And we have our board pledges, which I've illustrated here, which we believe reflect that. And our plans are designed to deliver on the outcomes that our customers have told us matter most and deliver the outcomes that communities want. So our plan for the Isles of Scilly, we'd really love to talk to you more about that, but we wanted you to know that we're really committed to the resilience and sustainability of delivering water and wastewater services for the future. And we really want that to be a partnership. I'm going to hand over to Andrew, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about the progress to date and some of the plans for this coming year.
Thanks, Jo. Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for this opportunity. As Jo said, I'm Director of Resilience. I've been involved with the Isles of Scilly only for a few months. And rely heavily on Helen for the local knowledge of what's going on. But I just want to pick up in terms of things that have happened over the course of the last few months. Obviously, our role on the Isles of Scilly formally started on the 1st of April last year, through what has been an unusual year, I think we can all say. So it's not been normal. It's not been business as usual. We have worked through that period of time steadily in order to make sure that we are delivering on the various actions that we said that we would over the course of the first 12 months and into the next few years. So a number of things have been done, some of which are obvious in and around the island, some of which are not, and they are sort of back office things that support that transition so that customers move over to us, move over to our billing system, so that the staff on the island move over to South West Water as employees, and we put in place training and development programs for all those operational staff. One of the things that I'll come back to at the end is the fact that first and foremost about everything that we do comes health and safety. That is our number one priority in what we do, making sure that everybody who is involved in our activities goes home safe at the end of the day. And so the safety inspection program for all of the assets that we are now responsible for started right from the get-go. It does continue. There is still work to do, and there's still work to do in terms of getting all of our employees on the island aligned with our health and safety approach that we are taking. But we've made a good start in that regard. Another thing that is probably less obvious is that we have really increased the sampling program of both drinking water and wastewater around on the island to understand quality and understand what's arriving at people's taps and understand the challenges that we face in terms of the commitments that we have with the DWI. Other elements around business continuity, and that takes on many forms. It takes on forms such as being able to link our people and our assets back to our core systems on the mainland. So there's a lot of IT business continuity, and there's some more obvious business continuity such as standby generators and things like that that have appeared on the island. And towards the bottom of that list, I guess more obvious for some people at the present moment is that we have the rollout of our metering program. So we've got off to a very good start in the last couple of weeks with the metering program on Tresco in particular. This is focused on non-household, so the sort of commercial side of metering, and our contractors have got off to a really good start on Tresco over the course of the last couple of weeks and made some very good progress. And so that metering program will roll out across the non-household, roll out across other islands over the course of the next 6 weeks or so. And then we'll pick up with household metering beyond that. So progress on a range of fronts over the course of the last 10 months or so. And a bit more detail on some of those things. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see some of those pictures, but on the right-hand side, we've made improvement works to the Atlantic Hotel CSO, so the storm discharge point at the Atlantic Hotel CSO, with better monitoring and understanding of what that's doing. We've done some reinforcement work on the networks on St Mary's. There's a photo there of the standby generator, one of the standby generators that we brought over. And the interesting photo of the man in yellow is inside one of the tanks on St Martin's, where there's a cleaning job going on at the present moment, which clearly showed the tank to be in not great shape in terms of its interior. So there's some really important work going on to understand water quality, understand the challenges that are faced on all of the islands, and then put in place our plans to make those improvements. So more work being done over the course of the next 10 weeks, I guess it is, through to 31st of March. We've got a number of delivery points, particularly on the environmental side, over on Tresco in particular, improving our monitoring and storm storage facilities over on Tresco that will be delivered by the end of March. So progress on all of those fronts. On a wider sort of context, a few more photos of things that are going on. The cool boxes isn't someone going and having a fantastic picnic. That is 1 day's sampling coming back from St Martin's, a goodly proportion of which ends up having to go back to the laboratories in Exeter to be analysed. So that is that's the scale of some of the sampling that goes on from one island on 1 day. So it's quite a logistical exercise. The samples have a shelf life. They have to be kept refrigerated, and they have to get back to Exeter in a good time frame. Interestingly, that sample bottle on the left-hand side is something that was taken out of that tank in St Martin's. That is sand and grit that was accumulated in the bottom of that tank, none of which does the treatment process any good. So very timely to get that tank cleaned out. The water butts, that's all about water conservation. It's all about the fact that we are really focused on good management of our resources, and helping customers to be water efficient in their homes is a critical part of our activities over the course of the next few years. And of course, you'll have seen our vehicles buzzing around. And then just really to pick up looking forward, and going back to Joe's initial slides, those 8 themes down the side, they are the things that our customers have told us are important to them for the course of the next 5 years. And so we've tried to translate that in terms of, okay, what does that mean for the islands, and what are our focal points? And I think overall, top of the list always when we ask our customers is clean, safe, reliable drinking water, and that is true on the islands. So that is a real focus for us during the course of the next year, to continue our work to understand water quality and continue our work to look at how we can best improve water quality, improve the use of our resources, and protect those resources, which is where the linkage comes in with the wastewater side. So that's the next point around environmental monitoring. So the two things are very much hand in hand. So the fourth point down about working with customers to reduce their water consumption and bills, that's where we're looking to understand what metering is telling us, understand what can be done through simple things such as water butts in order to reduce consumption. And I guess the one thing that we are only scratching the surface of at the present moment is understanding leakage. So the metering program is really important to us to get a handle on leakage on the clean water side around all the islands, and make sure that we can understand where they are, get them fixed, and better support our resources, which are clearly very precious during the summer period in particular. So that's our sort of broad programme over the course of this year, this coming year, and it rolls into more activities through to 2025. And so our next steps, again, picking up as Joe was saying, we are really keen to continue to develop our communication with our customers and the community through whatever channels present themselves. We will be proactively doing things, but anything that the council can do would be great. Drinking water quality and resources are a really key focus for next year. Continuing to develop our resources, and most importantly, making sure that everyone, all of our staff and all of our contractors and anybody who has interaction with our services and assets goes home safe at the end of the day. So that's my part, and yes, we will take any questions if anybody has them.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe and Andrew, for that presentation. I've got Councillor Mumford first, please.
Good morning. I see you've got an apprenticeship scheme or project, and it says 50 there. How many apprentices would you be able to offer to any of our school leavers on the islands?
It's a really good question, and one that I was hoping that the council would be interested in. In terms of that 50 is for our entire region, so I think we could definitely accommodate a couple of apprenticeships with the amount of work that we've got to do on the island. So if I'd be happy to work with anyone from the council to reach out to school leavers to see if anyone is interested. And indeed our Kickstart programme as well. We were one of the first water companies to sign up for that. I don't know if there is anyone on the islands that would benefit from a 6 months paid work experience. It's absolutely paid, and we'd be happy to understand if there was anybody living on the island that would benefit from that we could accommodate also.
Yes, I think Councillor Williams has got his hand up, and he's the lead member for children, so he has a lot of contacts with the school, so he would be the person to talk to there, I think.
Lovely.
And is it your plan to have everybody on water meters, or is it a choice for the households I'm talking about, not so much the businesses?
Yeah. For households, it's definitely a choice to have. What we would encourage people to consider going onto a water meter. And it does protect resources because people tend to be much more careful about the amount of water they use. Some people are a bit worried as well about going onto a water meter, and I think it's really good to let people know that once you do switch, you have got up to 2 years to decide if you like it or not. And if you don't like it, then you are very welcome to switch back. Now, we get very few people that tend to switch back, but we wanted to offer that safeguard to customers. So for household customers, though in general people tell us they believe it's the fairest way for customers to pay for the water they use, they still don't believe in our region currently that it should be compulsory for household customers. So at this point in time, it is still a choice. But you can save money from going on to a water meter, especially when we have our glide path of charges coming into line with the mainland.
Yes, I've had one fitted up already in. So, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you. There was lots of discussion a few years ago about alternatives to the way that we on St Mary's treat some of our sewage and wastewater in terms of it being discharged directly into the sea off the Garrison shoreline. And I was wondering if there was anything in the pipeline, pardon the pun, about where we might be going with that in terms of improving the environment, please.
The short answer is yes, but I'm not in possession of all the details at the present moment. There's quite a lot of investigation needs to go on still with that. And one of those triggers, unfortunately, was about understanding peak loads on the islands. And we were planning, the original intention was to do a lot of survey work during the gig championships to really understand peak loads. And of course, that didn't happen last year and isn't happening this year. Well, I'm not sure actually whether it's happening this year. I don't know. No, right, okay. So that understanding peak loads and therefore where what we need to put in and where we need to put it is quite an important part. And we recognise that we can't sit on our hands waiting for that peak load situation to occur. So we're going to have to work with what we've got. The wastewater investment side is more geared to years 3 and 4, more so, particularly in terms of significant investment, more so than next year. So next year is a period of time of understanding our options and putting together some scenarios that improve that situation. And Helen, I don't know if you want to add anything specific to that.
Andrew, no, absolutely. I think we're going to start our evaluations more in earnest this spring, so that we can deliver sewage treatment works by 2025. So, we are absolutely looking at our options, Councillor Williams, and looking at the best location for that to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
I haven't got any questions as such, but I just wanted to make a short statement, which is basically 10 months too late, because the handover to South West Water happened at a really awkward time in April last year, and it was a hugely important moment for the islands. I think it's one of the major planks of what the council's done over the last 4 or 5 years. A very important moment for the islands, but it happened with no fanfare at all. We were 2 weeks into the first lockdown. Craig Dryden and Helen Pearce had just left us, and so the officer team that led the process was no longer there. And coupled with all the COVID work that was going on at the time, it almost happened on the quiet. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody involved for the massive amount of quite intricate work involved, not least Helen. And importantly, I also wanted to give a big thank you to what was the council's very small water team who kept us potable for generations until we passed the mantle on. I think it's important to make that statement. I think we could do with trumpets on this really, but this is the only fanfare I can give. So thank you to everybody involved. I think that message needs to be passed on. Apologies that it's 10 months too late.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marcus, please.
Thanks, Chairman. One of the things, I totally echo what Steve said there, but one of the things that has been mentioned to me quite a lot since South West Water has been taken over, and it chimes with one of your 8 principles, was the fair charging and affordable bills for all, is that bills have gone up by about 40% since 2019. Can I give you the opportunity to justify that to our residents, please?
Yeah, Andrew, shall I do that?
Happy about that, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, well, as you said, fair charging and affordable bills for all are definitely an outcome that we feel very passionate about. In terms of justification, there is a cost to making sure that we have clean, safe, reliable water supplies and wastewater services. We do absolutely everything we can to minimise those costs. We're very conscious that that's really important. We live in quite a unique, and that's especially unique for the Isles of Scilly region, and it's quite different to the rest of the country. So, for example, if you were living in a big city, London always is the one that comes to mind, you have one sewage treatment works that can treat enough sewage for about 3 million people. For us, that's completely different. We've got to have hundreds of sewage treatment works right across the region, and indeed in the Isles of Scilly, and that's where the costs go. What I would say is that in terms of a fair bill and affordable for all, we have got a huge range of tools that we can help customers with, should they be struggling in any way. And I would absolutely encourage anyone who is struggling to please call us. I would hate to think anyone would be struggling in silence. Now, the first thing would be water bills can be reduced if you go onto a water meter, but there are also tariffs that we can put you on as well if you qualify for those to reduce your water bills. And also if people find themselves in really difficult life-changing circumstances, which, we can all find that happening at any point in our lives. For example, the bad death of a loved one. We have got tools that can help people with their bill so they don't have to struggle. So I would reach out and say to anybody that, there is a cost of living in this part of the world, and we are different from other water companies, but we can provide help, and we will provide help to anyone that needs it. And so if anyone is listening to this today and is struggling, please do not hesitate to contact us either by telephone. Our advisors are really well trained to listen to anyone's circumstances and to offer help proactively. So please do get in touch.
Thank you. Councillor Legg, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the off-islands, particularly St Agnes and St Martin's, there's a long history of private water supplies. One of the things you mentioned is clean water for all. When do you envisage people who are currently on a private water supply having the option to join the South West Water network?
There's probably one for myself and Helen. As I showed, on the public network on St Martin's, there's quite a lot of work to do in order to get that to a position of working effectively. And St Martin's is one of our key focus areas in terms of improving the public water supply. We believe that probably the best solution is a more consistent single solution rather than these multiple solutions with lots of little private water supplies. We'd be better off managing resources as one rather than lots of separate little entities. And in that way, we can protect the quality and quantity of those resources. So that's particularly the approach that we're investigating on St Martin's at the present moment. Time frame for doing that is probably in years 2 and 3 in terms of getting our own facilities resolved and sorted out. As you doubtless aware, we've got 3 separate locations on St Martin's. It doesn't justify that. We really need to consolidate and have one good source and make sure that we're using the best water that's available as raw water on the island. And in doing that, we should find that our anticipation is that we find that there is plenty of water to go around, and we can assist people who are on private water supplies at that stage. So we're probably talking, it's a couple of years to go before we're in a position where we can definitively say, yes, we've secured the water resources and we're in a position to be able to enable lots of connections from private water supplies. But that is certainly where we feel it's the best way to go, so that we have one consistent supply and we can positively ensure that that supply is compliant with all the DWI regulations, and we test it efficiently, effectively, as I've showed you with all those call boxes, and people can be confident that that is a good source of water. So that's where we would like to get to, but we are in early stages really of understanding the options, particularly around the resource situation. Helen, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yes, just to reassure you, Councillor Legg, that we're also looking at St Agnes as well as St Martin's, so it's having weekly samples, and we are focused there. We will be doing some tank cleaning for your tanks in the next couple of months, and we're also doing an evaluation for the water quantity. On St Agnes, it's more about the quantity of water, And so, to echo what Andrew just said, we will be looking at some investment in the next, about probably 2 to 3 years. But it's a little way off before we work out what exactly our options are there.
No, you touched on my other point, which was looking into the capacity as well. So thank you for that. I think Jonathan's probably going to pick up from there as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Councillor Smith, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And Councillor Legg exactly started where I meant to carry on. Essentially, I think you've answered the questions around the timings of the investment, which is very handy. And I think, firstly, very much support what Councillor Sims says. We very much welcome the investment. It's very important for our communities here. I think because of the history of St Martin's and St Agnes having a mixture of previously Dutch and private water supplies, it's a slightly different situation. And I think those on private water supplies who currently can't have a connection to South West Water because of a lack of capacity, that's not a criticism, it's an observation. I think people just want to have a bit more of an understanding about the plans for the investment programme, I guess. And of course, you're kindly coming to speak to us online next Monday, which is much appreciated, and I'm sure these questions will come up. So I'm just sort of, setting the scene a bit there, saying thank you for your engagement, and I think the communication engagement is really, really important. And lastly, just a very gentle challenge stroke question that I'm just bringing from, I chair the Climate Emergency Working Group here on the Council, and we set a Zero Carbon 2030 agenda, and just sort of a question stroke challenge to yourselves around your ambitions there in terms of reducing your carbon footprint for South West Water.
I can answer that, Andrew. We are absolutely committed to reducing our carbon footprint. One of our pledges is to be net zero by 2030, and we absolutely have putting a lot of effort into our plans right across our region to achieve that goal. So we would love to work with community in that respect to understand how we can work together on the Isles of Scilly to help make that happen.
That's really good to hear. Thank you. We'll be in touch. Thanks a lot for your help.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else waiting to come in on this, please? No? Well, I'd like to thank very much Jo for her presentation and to Andrew for coming in on this as well, and of course to Helen, who we all know and is with us on the islands all the time. Thank you, Helen, very much for your input. Councillor Sims has stolen my thunder somewhat this morning. As he said, as a council, we have not been able to acknowledge the handover in the past year for reasons we all know about. But from the chair, I would also like to reiterate my thanks to our very small water team for what they have done for the islands over the years. It's been a considerable effort for them because obviously they've worked in the past without the resources of South West Water, and they've done an amazing job, and we would like to thank them very much indeed, and wish them well for their future now with South West Water. So a huge thank you to them and to everybody, including you at South West Water, for how you've taken over this huge responsibility and got all this done. And we very much look forward to working with you in the future and having a very good partnership with you for the future of the island's water supplies and our waste treatment. So thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to move on to item 9 on our agenda, which is the first of our planning applications. And I'd like to hand over to our Senior Officer for Planning and Development, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a planning application that is brought to full council on the basis that the applicant is married to a serving council of the Council of the Isles of Scilly. The proposal is seeking a material change of use only on the domestic garden and domestic garden sheds to operate a tea garden. The use would operate 7 days a week from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. As you'll note from the report, the permission is sought to operate as a tea garden throughout the year, but it is considered that such a use would likely be most active for visiting members of the public on a seasonal basis, given the nature of the local economy and the seasonal nature of similar businesses. Officers have identified some potential for noise to cause an amenity issue for neighbouring properties, but overall and on balance, and subject to the conditions I've set out in the report, which is to restrict the use of external audio equipment, the proposed tea garden use is considered to be acceptable and is recommended for approval.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Councillor Marcus, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when I was reading the report, the two things I had in mind were noise, disturbance from the neighbours, and wastewater. They've both been covered off by the report. The officers think that there's not going to be a significant amount of extra pressure on the wastewater system, and that'll be reconciled by just emptying the tanks more often. And as for the noise, there is a condition on the recommendation about external music. Is there, just a question for the officer, would the applicant be able to get around this with temporary events licence at all?
If the temporary events licence conflicted with that policy, they would need to vary that condition. They would need to vary the condition to enable external audio equipment to be used.
Okay, so that would be a longer process than just a TEMS application.
Yeah,
to come back to all members. Yeah.
Conflict with the condition.
Okay, in that case, I'm happy to recommend the proposals.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims, please.
Yeah, I'm very happy to second it. I mean, I remember years ago now, 3 doors up, the Rendezvous did the same thing. It was very welcome up there, and it's quite handy to have somewhere else. I mean, what's it, 20-minute walk from Juliet's, and then you've got Carnby. It's quite handy to have another place, another point in the island. So I think it's great, and I'm looking forward to seeing Andy as a waiter.
Okay. Thank you very much. I take it you're seconding that.
I am seconding it, yes. There we go.
Thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconder for the granting of this application. Is there anybody against, please? No? Well, in that case, the application is granted. Thank you very much. Would somebody like to advise Councillor Guy that he can rejoin the meeting? Thank you. Item 10 on our agenda is the next planning application for Enna Close, and that's in the hands of Lisa as well. Thank you, Lisa.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this application is brought to full council on the basis that the Council of the Isles of Scilly owns the property and is the applicant in this case, and permission is sought to remove the existing chimney, which is required as an alteration to the roof of the dwelling. And the report is not considered that the removal of the chimney will have a harmful impact on the wider character of the conservation area, and on this basis the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I propose the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick?
Just to second the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconder for this application. Is anybody against this application, please? No, then this application is granted. Thank you very much. Item 11 on our agenda is also an application in Enna Close. Lisa, thank you.
Thank you. So this application is also brought to full council on the basis that these are council houses and the applicant is the council. And planning permission is being sought on the basis that works involve the repainting of 4 council houses. planning permission is required on Scilly for the painting of the exterior of any building. The proposed colour finish is considered to be appropriate, some magnolia finish of the external render, without giving rise to any harm to the wider character of the conservation area, and the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus?
Yeah, I propose the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick?
Two things, Chair. Firstly, I would be happy to second the recommendation in this case, but I would also like to say that there does appear to be several properties changing colour or have changed colour over recent months without the recommended planning permission, and I would just like to highlight that change of colour within a conservation area should come to planning, not necessarily to committee, of course, but to the notice of the planning department.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grottick. So I have a proposer and seconder for the granting of this application. Anybody against this application, please? No, then this application is also granted. Thank you. Item 12 on our
Chairman, can I just for clarification, just so that Councillor Sims isn't treated as voting against everything, can he put his hand down, please?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realise. Okay.
That's okay. I was bearing that in mind that it was still there. Thank you. Right, item 12, the next planning application is the number 2 Manila Flats. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is brought to full council on the basis that the applicant is an officer of the council. The proposal involves the construction of a raised balcony to the front elevation of the property to serve the first floor flat. So whilst it's noted that the proposal will introduce a degree of elevated overlooking, the raised front balcony would be in keeping with the wider character of this area, which has an established arrangement of elevated balcony structures. And no greater degree of overlooking was identified as a result of the application. It's also noted that there were no letters of objection from any of the neighbouring properties on this occasion. But overall, therefore, it's been concluded that the proposal would be in keeping with the street scene and the wider character of this area without giving rise to harm, and the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
He declared an interest, Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Would any other councillor like to come in on this recommendation, please, or would they like to propose it? Councillor Legg?
I'll propose the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dean?
Yeah, happy to second it.
Thank you. Anybody against this application, please? No, then it's granted. Thank you very much, Lisa. Item 13 on the agenda is a planning application for Blackbird's Perch on St Martin's. So in your hands again, Lisa, please.
Can we wait, Chairman, for Councillor Marcus to join us? I don't think he has yet.
Yep, certainly. And I take it Councillor Smith has left us.
Yes, Chairman, yes.
Yeah. Councillor Marcus is back. Thank you. So, Lisa, if you could kick off. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is brought to the full council on the basis that the applicant is married to a councillor of the Council of the Isles of Scilly. The proposal is partially retrospective on the basis that a larger area of land has been actively used as domestic curtilage without planning permission, including the installation of standalone solar panels. The application also proposes to erect an ancillary outbuilding to be used as an office space with garden storage. Proposal to retain the land as domestic curtilage, including the solar panels, has been assessed as acceptable. There are conditions recommended at Appendix A that seek to ensure that the usual permitted development rights are removed. This is to ensure that more structures, including any means of enclosure, are not erected which could result in harm to the wider landscape, and to ensure the solar panels are removed from the site once no longer required. Subject to these conditions, the use of the land and the solar panels are considered acceptable. Proposal to erect a new outbuilding for the purposes incidental to the dwelling of Blackbird's Perch considered to be appropriately sited and designed would accord with the emerging policies of the local plan. The proposed outbuilding is also considered to be acceptable without giving rise to any harm. And overall, the proposal is recommended for approval subject to those conditions set out at Appendix A.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I haven't got any issues with this planning application. It seems to be a good way of making sure that no extra development goes on the land rather than what it's used for, and that it's not impacted in any negative way. So therefore I propose the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the conditions are sensible and very reasonable to have put in place. I would just ask Lisa if she's heard from the Duchy, because I would have thought that we should have had notification that the Duchy was content or had no objection to this application. Thank you.
Yes, I can confirm that. The Duchy, providing this is all in accordance with planning policies, they have no objections to the application.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please, for the granting of this application? Councillor Legg, thank you. Is anybody against this application being granted, please? No, then it's granted. Thank you very much indeed. Item 14 on our agenda is the adoption of a local validation checklist for planning applications.
Can we again wait for Councillor Smith to rejoin us?
Yes, thank you. Is somebody advising him, please?
Yeah, he has been contacted, Chairman.
He may not, of course, wish to, but as long as he's been contacted, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to kick off, Lisa, with item 14, then please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we've brought a report back to you, members, which sets out the requirements and expectations with regard to validating planning applications at the local level. Nationally, there is a validation checklist for any planning application submitted to any local planning authority in England and Wales. The local planning authority must validate a planning application submitted to the Council of the Isles of Scilly on the day it's received if all the national validation requirements have been submitted. The list of national requirements does not reflect the local circumstances and policy requirements. And in order to require locally important information to form part of a planning application, the Council must first consult on and adopt a list of local validation requirements. Adopting a local validation checklist enables officers to obtain all the required information to inform the recommendation before the 8-week consideration period commences. This is critical in terms of the speed of decision making, which is one of the performance metrics the government monitors for each local planning authority. The local validation checklist also sets the clear expectations to applicants and developers as to what we will be required locally in order to inform decision making. Officers consulted on the local validation checklist back in August 2019 and have now reviewed and considered the consultation responses received. These are attached at Appendix A in the report. Officers have noted the comments submitted and made some adjustments to the checklist. Attached to Appendix B is the householder validation checklist, which officers consider should be adopted with the rest of the checklist, which will swiftly follow and align with that first householder checklist. The validation checklist attached to the report is considered to represent a list of information requirements necessary to inform local decision making. Officers will need to monitor the checklist to ensure they can be updated to reflect any validation issues that arise, which we will have to monitor. Local validation checklists also need to be updated every 2 years to ensure they remain reflective of local circumstances, particularly with respect to planning policies. And members are asked to note the responses of the draft checklist and approve the adoption of the local validation checklist for planning applications submitted to the Council of the Isles of Scilly. We don't anticipate it will make a significant difference to the validation process. It does enable us to push back on some applications where there is missing information. And it also, in some of the information requirements, does give applicants the option to confirm that they have or they haven't provided it, and give us a reason why they haven't provided it, and also in some cases agree at that stage to, give them the opportunity to confirm they're happy with it as a condition, should it be required. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity. My reasoning behind this paper is to increase the transparency around the planning application process. This gives applicants an idea of what they need to validate their application, and also gives officers, like Lisa said, the opportunity to push back on that validation, just to say, you guys need to get this stuff in order before the clock starts ticking. So it's really good to see that the 3 comments that were received in the consultation have been acted on, and changes have been made to the process, which shows that officers are listening to what the public are saying. And overall, I'm really happy with it, so I'd propose recommendations.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I support Councillor Marcus's comments, and I think particularly this will help both applicants and officers, so it's very welcome. And I particularly welcome the sustainable design measures check. That's certainly something I'm very passionate about. Just one question, it's around the archaeological assessments. There's a note on page 118, and there's really a question around what you say when it adjoins an area of archaeological interest. Is that a set distance? Because it is quite, it can add a fair amount of cost to applicants if they need to do an archaeological written scheme of investigation.
It generally tends to apply. It depends on the scale of what's being proposed and the amount of groundwork that are involved. And if that is significant and it's within an archaeological constraint area, that tends to be the trigger for someone having to do an archaeological written scheme of investigation, which we do. If people come to us before they make a planning application, we can check and we can advise people if their land is likely to be in those areas, and flag up it has the potential to increase the cost if they are asked to do archaeological monitoring. Yeah.
And is there a particular distance that you use to determine that?
No, there isn't a distance. We do consult. There is within Cornwall Council a development management archaeological advisory officer who has a look. They keep the historic environment record for the Isles of Scilly. They record all the findings, every little find spot, every little archaeological stone, anything that's of interest. It's held on the historic environment record. They consult the historic environment. They have a look at the scale of the proposal and give an informed view as to understanding what previous activities may have already disturbed the ground in a particular site, and give us their view as to whether or not they would expect archaeological monitoring. We then go back to the applicant and flag that up. It's likely to be a condition, and they have the opportunity through the pre-commencement conditions regulations, where we have to give them 10 working days to push back on any pre-commencement conditions and give them the opportunity to make the case as to why they don't think that's required, and we will then consider that.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds fair. Thank you, and I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconder for the 2 recommendations. Is anybody against the adoption, please? Anybody at all? No, then that is adopted. Thank you very much indeed, Lisa, for all your work. Okay, so we will move on now to item 15 on our agenda, which is the recommendations from Scrutiny Committee, Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service Assurance, in the hands of the Chair of Scrutiny, Councillor Mumford, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I ask the interim Chief Executive for Fire and Rescue, Ashton Khan, to take you through the paper and answer any questions you have. I'd like to emphasise recommendation 2, that training for members in relation to the responsibilities of a fire and rescue authority to be given as soon as possible after our elections, or if for any reason our elections are delayed, the training should be done as soon as possible. I'd now like to ask the Senior Manager, Ashton Khan, to take you through the paper and answer any questions. I can't see Ashton there, actually.
I'm here. I am here. Hello. Are you okay?
Oh, you're there, Ashton.
Hello. Yeah. Here.
Take us through the paper. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chairman, and thank you so much, Chairman of Scrutiny. So I do not propose to talk at length because I think this is a great example of how Scrutiny has matured so well. But this is the whole point, that they've done all the legwork, so it doesn't dominate full council. You can make the decisions you need to, and Scrutiny will reassure you that they've done a deep dive. So in terms of being a really accountable fire and rescue authority, I think the questioning and robustness of the Scrutiny meeting would meet most expectations for HMI. So thank you very much. It was a lot of work, but we really appreciated it, and I think the contribution of members has really helped us develop our services. The report was written by Bob, who supports Scrutiny. So that they are the conclusions of Scrutiny, and what they are recommending to you is that, having looked at it in detail over time, they are content that they can recommend to you, the wider membership body, that the Fire and Rescue Service is meeting the expectations of a modern fire and rescue service. So that's all I'm going to say. Any specific questions, happy to answer.
Thank you. Anybody with any questions, please? Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question as such, but just to say that I do support the recommendation for training, because I, for one, am aware that I'm probably not fully cognizant of all our responsibilities in this area, so I totally support the training recommendation. Thank you.
Wonderful. That's great, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick, are you proposing these recommendations?
Yes, I'd be quite happy to do that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Yes, I'd like to second it. It's loads and loads of work has been done already on this, and as enjoyable as it was going through it the first couple of times, I don't really want to go through it again. So I second it, and second both proposals wholeheartedly.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder for the adoption of these recommendations. Is anybody against these recommendations, please? No? Then they are adopted. Thank you. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Mumford and Scrutiny Committee and Senior Manager Ashling Khan and Senior Officer Bob Dawson for all their work on this. Thank you very much indeed. So the next item on our agenda is item 16, which is the adoption of a licensing policy 2020 to 2025, and that in the hands of Mike Coates, our Senior Officer for Environmental Health. Over to you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'd just like to introduce the licensing policy to present the statement of the licensing policy, which has undergone a 5-year review and an update in accordance with Section 5 of the Licensing Act 2003. The review was carried out with input from public consultation, which we did twice, the Licensing Committee meeting review held on the 12th of October 2020, and also looked at any legislative changes. The details of any amendments we've made can be found at Appendix B, and I'd just like to, the recommendations that the members approve the reviewed licensing policy and that a review of the late night levy be undertaken within the next 12 months. Is there any question? I have Senior Officer for Licensing, Linda Banfield, with me to answer any questions on the policy. Is there any question, Chair?
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Watt, please, Chair of Licensing.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a very brief comment on recommendation 2. It's been pointed out to me by the Vice Chairman the other day that there might be a slight ambiguity in that people may believe that we already have a late night levy in place because it said a review of the late night levy for the Isles of Scilly. We don't actually have one yet, so it will be a new one. And a point to make second on that if the licensing committee do agree that we should go ahead with the late night levy, it has to be approved by full council. So it won't be a question for just the licensing committee. And thirdly, the main difficulty with the late night levy, of course, is that it will apply to every single license holder within the Isles of Scilly. At the moment, now there is a plan that it may be specific in the future. For instance, in the cumulative impact zone or to a particular area or whatever. But at the moment, that is not a legislation. So I'm quite happy to recommend both those recommendations. However, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Watt. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, I'll second the recommendation, but I'd just like to point out that licensed establishments are going to be really under threat over the next coming period because of the results of the pandemic. Adding extra costs to them is not going to be helpful in terms of their survivability and therefore the attractiveness to tourists of the islands. So I think it's just worth stating rather that the council does support licensed establishments and that we will hopefully be supporting them and encouraging them through the recovery after the pandemic.
Thank you very much. Would you like to reply, Linda, please?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. I've been prepared. I've downprinted the latest guidance on late night levies yesterday from the government website. A late night levy would only be implemented if it was after consultation with the local police and the police commission in order to establish whether there was actually a need. I actually quite agree with what Councillor Marcus has said. I think at this time to consider a late night levy would be detrimental to the businesses on the island. As my own conversations with the police and police licensing is that there have been only ever one complaint and it's only ever from one person, and therefore a late night levy they would personally say would not be necessary. But that's as it is today. I can't say that won't change in the future.
Thank you for that, Linda. Councillor Grottick, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm surprised that you've only had one formal representation because certainly as far as I'm concerned, there are a small but significant number of people, residents, fellow islanders, who are affected by late night noise issues. I know we've got low levels of ambient noise, and I know that this may not be a widespread problem, but nevertheless, I do think we need to look at the whole area of late night noise in the context of the possibility, not necessarily, that a form of late night levy may be a good idea. My personal view is that there are other ways that we should be exploring first to see if we can address this issue. But putting it within the context of looking at a late night levy is probably a good idea. So I would second the recommendations, even though I don't at this moment, I have to say, think that a late night levy is necessarily the best way of addressing the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watt, again, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to answer Dan Marcus's, Councillor Marcus's comment about added cost, the levy would be based on rateable value. Just to point that out.
Thank you. Linda Bamfield, you wish to come back in, please?
In answer to Councillor Grottick, generally, Councillor Grottick, a late night levy is put in place when there is a high level of crime. Noise generally falls under environmental health issues, not licensing, and therefore to put a late night levy because of the noise in the street would not necessarily be a good idea.
Thank you, but I'm sure we can explore this if we accept the recommendation and then do it as a piece of detailed work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we have a proposer in Councillor Watt, seconder in Councillor Marcus. Is there anybody against the adoption of these two recommendations, please? No, then they are carried. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mike and Linda. Our next item on the agenda is item 17, proposal from DEFRA on the Zoo Licensing Act. Also in your hands, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'd like to introduce you to this report to present a proposal put forward by DEFRA to add the Council of the Isles of Scilly to the responsible local authorities listed within the Zoo Licensing Act 1981. DEFRA is undergoing a review of the Act at the moment and will be presenting proposed amendments to Parliament in the near future. This is good timing. In accepting the proposals, the Council will hold powers of management and enforcement should an application for such a premise be submitted in the future. So the recommendation, So the recommendation is that members approve the proposal from DEFRA to add the Council of the Isles of Scilly as an authorised local authority to the Zoo Licensing Act 1981 as part of a review due to be presented through Parliament by DEFRA. Is there any questions, Chair, for this particular report?
Thank you very much, Mike. Councillor Sims, please.
I mean, a few years back, this would probably be slightly, risible, but we did have a sort of proto-zoo over here 4 or 5 years back, and I think it's quite useful. I think of an emus, no ostriches though. So yeah, I very much would like to propose this recommendation.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, Councillor Grottick? Thank you. Is there anybody against this recommendation, please? No, then it's approved. Thank you very much. Item 18 on our agenda is the adoption of a private water supply policy. Also in your hands, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just I'd like to present the Council's new private water supply policy and procedures that's being developed in accordance with the current regulations. The document details that you'll see the responsibilities of the Council in monitoring and managing the private water supplies of the island, which is essentially really ensuring that where, for example, the private water supply is shared, it is managed adequately and it's safe to use. And the main thing here is that it does not constitute a potential danger to human health. That's the main thing we're trying to achieve. The document as you'll see, also details operational processes, and there is further information on the charging scheme. The new charging scheme which we've got is based on current regulations using a cost recovery system, meaning actual costs. And the council, like all councils, have a statutory responsibility to monitor the islands for private water supplies. And all councils in the UK, as we're the last ones to join us, are expected to recover reasonable costs. To emphasise the word reasonable costs, and it's cost recovery only. There will be risk assessments for the private water supplies once every 5 years, and the bills there will be divided over those years and cost shared with those on the supply. There are a number of ways, I'd like to say this now, that we can aim to reduce charges and support affected relevant person or persons on supplies. Obviously, there are laboratory charges, analysis charges, which are fixed, but operational charges can be reduced in many ways. And one good way of reducing costs will be the completion of a pre-assessment questionnaire, private water questionnaire by the relevant persons. This will greatly reduce the time taken by officers to complete the risk assessment, leading to a lower charge. And also, there's a possibility of a discount or reduction for early return of the questionnaire. This questionnaire will be going out following a webinar meeting with Jonathan and South West Water on Tuesday, and that will give a chance for people to complete and return the information. The more information given, the less time that it will take for the team to do the actual work, and the cost will be reduced. We'll advise and support all the way. We'll try and reduce costs, whether it be transport, where we use tripper boats rather than specials during the season. That will reduce costs. The main private water supplies are on St Martin's and St Agnes, and therefore we will operate where we can try and do more than one risk assessment or water sampling on each island. So reducing the cost again by sharing the cost of risk assessments and analysis and sampling. That will divide the cost, and sharing other costs that we might have in the future, like training costs with Cornwall Council. So I just wanted to emphasise the cost side of things, and just to make a recommendation that members approve the private water supply policy and procedures set out in Appendix A, and that members approve the charging scheme set out within Table 1 and Table 2 of this report, in accordance with the methodology set out within Appendix B. Any questions, Chair?
Thank you very much, Mike. Councillor Smith, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thanks, Mike, for this explanation. As you pointed out, these really affect people and businesses on St Martin's and St Agnes almost exclusively. As we said during the South West Water item, it's because of the historical nature of the place that there's been a mixture of both Dutchy water supplies and private water supplies. As things stand, South West Water do not have the capacity to take on extra connections. And so those with private water supplies currently don't have another option. They have to stay on their private water supply. There is no other option. From a policy point of view, I completely support the notion that obviously we need to monitor the water supplies here, and we have a statutory obligation to do so. In terms of the charging structure, this is problematic, and I've had a lot of representations on this particular subject from St Martin's residents and businesses, and they're not happy with the scale of charges and have made the point that South West Water are investing many millions of pounds in our overall water system, and yet those on a private water supply here have essentially have to fund it themselves. And as I say, it's not because they choose to, it's because there is no other option at the moment. So with that in mind, I feel I can support recommendation 1 but not 2, and would recommend that we actually go away and talk about a charging structure that might be fair both to applicants and the council. But I'd also like to hear from Councillor Legg, because I know he has also concerns around this.
Thank you. Councillor Legg?
Yes, thank you. Mike, could you give a sort of, looking at the charging structure, it's not clear how much one applicant would look to what would cost them per annum. The risk assessment is lasts for 5 years, so you've got £70 to £80 for the risk assessment. But then, how many samples are they likely to need, and how many tests are they likely to need per year?
Okay, so the private water suppliers are split it really into Reg 9 and 10. So you've got Reg 9 commercial and large supplies, and then you've got 10 on domestic. So with all private supplies, a risk assessment has to be done once every 5 years. Okay, so that has to be done, and obviously the costs will be shared between all those on the supply. So the cost will be divided over a 5 year. So it's a 5 year period for that. For actual samples, it's likely that on commercial supplies, larger supplies, there may be at least an annual monitoring program in place for that. And then with the domestic ones, it's like once every 5 years. So if you look at the estimated kind of costs up put in there, you can see how you can divide those kind of costs over 5 years or annually if you're on larger or commercial supplies. Does that answer the question, Harry?
Just to be clear, we're talking about sort of a ballpark of £300 to £500 a year per supply. If you've got multiple customers on one supply, they obviously would share that cost. But per supply, it's in the ballpark. We're talking £300 to £500, given sort of one test, one analysis, and a fifth of a risk assessment.
Yeah, and basically you can, each supply, because once we get to know more about the supply, it will be on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, if you're on a smaller supply, then the risk assessment's not going to take as long as, say, a larger commercial supply. So you can see where, the hours, so the less hours we have to work on it, the better. And if the information's there, Harry, from, Councillor Eggs, from the relevant person or persons, then, that will be less time for the officers to work on it. So you can't sort of exactly say, what the costs are going to be. But it's going to be on,
Certainly, but a sort of rough idea. You mentioned that there's 39 supplies across the islands, mainly St Agnes and St Martin's. Those are probably all sort of small businesses, really. I mean, in the national sense of the term small business, they will all be small, but in the local sense, the majority are probably small businesses, are they not?
Yeah, on the when you look at them scale-wise, we haven't got any major commercial supplies like you would have on the mainland. So you've got in Cornwall, you've got large dairies and holiday parks, which are supplied by private water supply. So we're not on that scale. So if that helps, it won't be as complex as there's a lot of private water supplies on the mainland large they are and the complexity. So the more we know about the supplies and the information, the less time we need to spend on it and reduce the costs significantly.
You also mentioned the sort of household supplies and that there's under Regulation 10, it's sort of reduced charges for household supplies. Do they have to go through this procedure, or is it? I mean, I remember at a meeting, the Drinking Water Inspectorate did say that, well, you can drink out of a muddy puddle if you want to. So I suppose my question is it possible to enforce this for a domestic supply, or is it only enforceable on a supply where the public are supplied?
So just to make it clear, so domestic-wise, if you've got a single supply, we've got a single well or borehole, and you don't share it, then you wouldn't come under this analysis risk assessment program, sampling program. But if you share a supply, whether it be domestic or commercial or a large supply, then you will be having to do a risk assessment and any monitoring that comes from that. So the risk assessment is important to identify how much sampling is required, what sampling is required parameter-wise. So, yeah, anything above a single household, yeah. So,
yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Those are my questions.
That's fine. Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Yeah, thank you. I've done numerous consultations and meetings on the off-islands over the years on this. I mean, those largely started in winter 2015, when this whole thing came into process. And the message, we got a very good response to this. I think it really helped our case with DEFRA and everything. But the message that we were giving then, this was myself and Craig, and I guess Taylor, when he was CEO at the time, was that, regarding private water supplies, obviously, that this would be looked at sympathetically. And this actually wasn't just said in thin air. It was regarding information we had back from DEFRA and the Drinking Water Inspectorate. Now, bearing in what Mike's just said, I think we are going to look at this sympathetically. The reason for this was essentially it's a new burden which people were not necessarily expecting, and there was a great deal of concern on the off-island. So I just very much want us to look at it sympathetically. And also I note that Mike just said that if it's a shared supply, then you're subject to it, which obviously helps with the cost rate and everything. So I'm inclined to agree with Jonathan that I approve one, but I think perhaps two, we could perhaps look at a way of making it a little more equitable, because I'm not altogether sure what the cost could be if something goes horribly wrong for people, if you know what I mean. So that's my view on it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grottick, please. You're muted, Councillor Grottick.
Sorry, Chair. This is a challenging area, and I'm very glad to hear that all steps are being taken to try and address the cost issues. I just wonder if the Chief Executive would be kind enough to confirm that we do have a statutory obligation as an authority to cover the costs incurred by individual pieces of work, and that if we don't receive the monies to cover the service, then what we're actually saying is that it will devolve on other taxpayers. And this is actually quite a difficult thing to do. So I think we need to think carefully. But what I do suggest, perhaps either formally or informally, we accept that we support the continuing endeavours to keep charges as reasonable as possible, and that if members thought this was a way forward, we could make this a formal third recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think we need a third recommendation, personally. Without any knowledge on what people on private water suppliers are currently paying, what the increase is, and without any cost modelling, I don't think we can approve any charges. I can't approve any charges, so I would support Jonathan in approving recommendation 1, but not 2. And just reminding to the off islands that everyone else on South West Water Supply saw their bills go up by over 40% over the last 2 years. So there has been increased costs for everyone, and those costs need to be shared amongst the community. The only other questions I would ask were that because this is a new burden, like Councillor Sims pointed out, I just want to make sure that the team has got enough resource to carry out these tests, and what the liability is to the council if the tests go wrong.
Okay, thank you. Stephen Taylor, you wish to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps it might help members if Mr. Coates just explains what happens if the second recommendation is deferred or not approved, what our current charging scheme is that would continue.
Thank you. Mike? I think you're muted, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As explained in the report and policy, the charges changed because local authorities were struggling to cover financially risk assessments and other private water supply work. They weren't covering the costs. So it was changed to prevent the maximum level. So I think that was mainly for larger supplies, like I explained earlier. But I think if we're going to go with the regulations, that is how it stands. In the regulations, it's reasonable costs only, and it's only recovery of costs. But there is always that currently that you can't put a maximum figure on it. So I don't. Yeah, that's how it would stand at the moment. It's not to say that because it's all new for us at the moment, so we'll be able to work out how much the costs are going to be for an average risk assessment, and obviously the hourly rate that we have applies. So that hourly rate is fixed at the moment. I mentioned it in the £62.61 at the moment. So that's already fixed in there. So whether that is something that obviously we've got at the moment, and that figure will be used when we work out the cost of risk assessments.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Paul Masters, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just Fran asked me to make some comments, on this particular report, and I understand the points that members are making, particularly about financial burdens on businesses. The thing, though, I think that we must perhaps talk about as a principle, and we can come back to the actual costs in a minute, is that this principle is about that councils are expected to recover reasonable costs. They're not expected to subsidise this service. So we are expected to recover what are reasonable. And what I'm picking up is you need to have further challenge to understand what reasonable costs are and have the confidence that we are minimising those costs as much as we can. But I hope members, you would be at least supportive in the fact that reasonable costs should be recovered. I think also I wanted to make the point that whilst this is obviously focused on charging, quite understandably, we mustn't lose sight this is a public health intervention. At the end of the day, this is about ensuring that people, particularly in businesses or in multiple supplies, actually are complying with their public health obligations to provide wholesome water to those that are drinking it. and we mustn't move away from that. And whilst Mike's right in terms of the issue of single households, etc., and single water supplies, I would even urge those to consider taking up offers of risk assessments and regular sampling. I do myself, funnily enough, I'm on a private water supply, and you know, it does point out whether you've got bacterial or chemical issues in your water, which may or may not be affecting human health. So, I mean, let's not forget the principle of why this is in place. It's not about charging, it's about public health at the end of the day. But Chairman, whilst the debate continues, perhaps if it is becoming an area of division amongst members, perhaps the policy could be approved, as we say. We've got budget sessions later. We're going to bring the budget paper back to the February Council, and perhaps the charges could be fixed then.
Thank you very much, Paul. Councillor Mumford, please.
Yes, thank you, Paul, for that. I wouldn't be able to recommend the recommendation 2. I think the charges, it's not definite enough. People like to know exactly what they're going to be paying, I think. And I was surprised that the hourly rate was £62 an hour. Wow. But actually, for 5 hours that you take for a risk assessment, that would work out at about £310. So I would like a deferment on this to be discussed further with the charges. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Legg, please.
Thank you. I'm actually in the position where I have a South West Water connection to my business, and I have a private supply at home. So, just for examples, they actually cost me about the same in terms of running costs. I have to buy filters and bulbs and everything for my private supply, on top of the setup costs of the pumps and the filters and the treatment plant. So there's more costs involved than simply these costs. These are the bureaucratic monitoring costs rather than the entire costs. So if it hasn't already been seconded, I would second deferring recommendation 2.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just to round off this debate then, just for clarity, I think my proposal was to support recommendation 1 and to defer recommendation 2, and I think that's what Councillor Legg was either proposing or seconding. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Paul, do you want to come in again, or is that a legacy hand?
Sorry, Chairman. It was just. I understand the point. I think I've made my comment about would members be okay if that, we aim, though, to bring back those charges to full council as part of our budget setting exercise, and to accept the principle, subject to challenge from members, that reasonable cost recovery is at the heart of the principle of this. Or is that going too far?
So, do we have a member comment on that, please? Councillor Smith?
Well, I see where you're coming from, Paul. I think certainly we could say that recommendation 2 we can defer and bring back to full council next month. I think we just need to discuss this item about cost recovery and bring it back next month, if that's okay.
I certainly agree with the principle of reasonable cost recovery. I think I would like to see us consider a maximum.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, are you wanting to come in, please?
Yeah, I would just concur with that because overall I think the basic sort of running costs of this are not going to be prohibitive, and then it's not going to be particularly more expensive or be ballpark what it is if you live on St Mary's or the other islands with a supplied water supply. But if we get a situation where the cost for individuals or businesses become prohibitive, then I think perhaps we need some sort of maximum or some sort of intervention mechanism on this, because it could make people's lives and businesses untenable. So I think that's something we need to consider.
Okay, thank you. Stephen Taylor, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want to be crystal clear as to what the amendment is for, because in the table at 1, paragraph 24, that sets out the current fees and charges for private water sampling for 2020-21. So they're the current fees, which is why I wanted to ask Mr. Coates whether, if the amendment is accepted, what is currently in place, what is the status quo, just to ensure that the members are aware of what the implications are of the amendment.
Mike?
Thank you, Stephen, Chair. Those current fees and charges were the charges that were in place before the amendments were made, where councils could then put in place remove the maximum figures. So within this report, we're obviously asking for that to follow the regulations there, and for there to be no maximum cost at this stage. But what I can say is that obviously this is new to the council, and we do have some information historically already. But as time goes on, say in 5 years, so we do the first risk assessment, it might take a bit longer than in 5 years' time when we've got all the information in place, and the time spent on a risk assessment will be a lot less, so the cost will be less in the future. So in the future, costs will be reduced rather than increased because of the information that we've gathered on each supply. If that.
So are we saying, Chairman, that if the amendment goes through, then there is no maximum charge? Because the current charges, which have already been approved, do not have a maximum charge. Is that right, or am I misunderstanding the situation through you to Mr. Coates?
Mike, would you like to answer that?
Yeah. So obviously the current charges, there is a maximum figure on there, but that would we're expecting that to be taken away in this case, Stephen.
So by removing the second recommendation, you are maintaining a maximum charge. Is that right?
I don't think we wish to maintain that maximum charge.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Smith wanted to come in.
Yeah, I think I see where you're going with this, Stephen. And I think maybe I'd slightly change my proposal on recommendation 2, is that we defer setting charges and levying charges until we bring it back to full council next month.
I'm not sure you can do that because you have to make a charge. Whether you enforce it's another matter. But I don't think that the council can say it's not going to enforce the charges that it has to make.
Right. So a softer way of doing it, Stephen?
What, you mean on the hoof without any notice? Okay.
Could I just butt into it? Is there any work plan?
While you're considering that, could I bring Nicola in, please?
Of course.
While you're considering, Nicola, please.
Yeah, so I think the thing we do have in place are the fees and charges you set last year. What Mike's struggling with is that we didn't have fees and charges for this particular piece of work because we didn't have the responsibility. So what we have in place through your fees and charges that were set last year is our hourly rate. So the current position, default position, as it stands at this moment in time, is an hourly rate charge, which will be our reasonable costs. And then if we set that for now, leave that for now, which is what I think you're saying, Jonathan, we can then review that. We'll run some case studies in the next month or so, look at what those costs actually turn out to be, using both the standard rate and the proposals that might have put forward now. And I think that might be a way forward. So use the existing hourly rate for now, put that in place for the next month. When we do the new budget setting, we'll do some case studies to inform you about what that might mean in terms of new charges moving forward. Does that sound reasonable?
I'm happy with that.
Right, thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, am I right in thinking that the second recommendation will now read that we are continuing with our hourly charge for the next month, and that we will review the charging scheme prior to February Council?
I think that's the effect of it, yes, but the wording will be that we'll continue with our hourly charge until further reviewed, which will be presented to the February Council with the budget proposals.
Okay, so we have to recommendation 2, for which we have a proposer and a seconder. Do we have any councillors against the amendment of the second recommendation, please? No, then that's carried. So could we now take the recommendation 1 and the amended recommendation 2, and could I have a proposer for their approval, please? That's Councillor Legg, and a seconder, please. Councillor Smith.
Yes,
thank you. Anybody against these two recommendations? Then they're carried. Thank you all very much. So we move on to item 19 on our agenda, which is the adoption of a responsible procurement policy, which is in the hands of our senior officer, Keith Brossett. Thank you, Keith.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. The purpose of this paper and policy is to set out our key principles regarding how we procure goods, works and services from the Isles of Scilly. It's about taking a whole life approach to procurement, having a good grasp of the ethical and sustainable issues surrounding the issues and the goods we wish to procure, and making sure that we're getting best value in the whole life of the product or goods with regards to the environmental impact, particularly carbon costing and also social and economic impacts. So the policy is as is, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith, please.
Yeah, thanks. Keith, thank you very much for this, and to Tanya for her input as well. It's a very welcome policy and is much needed in our pathway towards zero carbon, as well as being, of course, a responsible organisation on the islands. Particularly welcome the point that best value is not just about the ticket price of items. That's a very important point as we widen our understanding of what values are, and also that we use our influence to help influence other suppliers in our chain and people we work with. I think that's a very valuable point to be made. Just one question around the policy, and it says it is to be applied to purchases over 25,000. Those under 25,000, some of which could be regular, whether they're for supplies and services or whatever, would they not also come under this policy, and if not, why not?
They will in due course. The idea of the 25,000 trial period was that currently everything over 25,000 has to come over my desk. In any case, I have an eye on everything that's at that threshold to get onto Contract Finder. So the ambition, once we've trialled it on that scale, with other ambitions around procurement, will be to roll it out across the whole whole price spectrum.
Thank you very much. Perhaps I can just make a second proposal for a second recommendation, which is that this is reviewed by full council at least on an annual basis, given the nature of the emerging, is an emerging policy.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Yes, thank you, Keith. I think it's a very good paper, and I would like to second it. I would just ask the question, did we previously have an irresponsible procurement policy?
But yeah, we just never verbalised how good we are.
Yes, and just regarding the 25k that Jonathan just mentioned, I'm hoping, and I think it will happen in due course, that this whole thing will just be embedded within the council. It'll be almost like muscle memory, I hope. So I think at this point, set a reasonably high goal, a reasonable high number, but I imagine it will be subsumed into all the way down to paper clips in the end. So thank you again, Keith, and I'm seconding.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Cheers. Just amending Jonathan's amendment, if you like. I think it needs to come back to scrutiny. No one to volunteer work for scrutiny, but this is the kind of work that the scrutiny committee should be doing, and probably 12 months. I thought, is that fair, Keith? For to review it, or 6 months? I don't know how many contracts you get, really. So
let's do a year's worth.
Okay. So that's the second recommendation, that is reviewed in 12 months by the scrutiny committee. Is that okay?
Jonathan, are you happy with that?
Yes, that sounds like a good plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's a shame, really, that it's already been seconded, because I was lined up to do this. I'm very pleased with this report. In fact, I've been pushing it for 6 months or so. I first raised it at the Climate Change Working Group several months ago, and really pleased to see this report. Congratulations, Keith, and thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, have you got your hand up again? No. Okay, thank you. So we have a proposer and seconder for a second recommendation here, that the policy is brought before scrutiny in 12 months' time. Are there any councillors against that second recommendation, please? No. So you've got the two recommendations in front of you. Could I have a proposer for both recommendations, please?
I propose.
Councillor Smith, and seconded by Councillor Mumford. Any councillors against the two recommendations? No, then they're approved. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much, Keith, and to Tanya for your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that concludes part one of our meeting. Part two are for information only, the schedule of delegated planning applications and lead member updates. So with that, I will close the meeting. Thank you very much indeed for everybody's attendance.